The 18th century began with a world at war. The dawn of this new century saw nations embroiled in conflicts that would shape the course of history. The echoes of cannons and the clash of swords were heard across continents, signaling a period of intense and widespread warfare. Across the Atlantic, European powers clashed in a struggle for dominance. The seas became battlegrounds as mighty navies fought for control of trade routes and colonies. The ambitions of empires like Britain, France, and Spain led to fierce confrontations, both on land and at sea. This conflict, known as the War of the Spanish Succession, quickly spilled over into North America. The war, which began as a European dispute over the Spanish throne, soon involved the colonies. The New World became a new front in this global struggle, with battles raging from the forests of Canada to the swamps of Florida. Here it became known as Queen Anne's War, named after the English Queen. Queen Anne's War was a brutal and protracted conflict that saw settlers and soldiers alike caught in the crossfire. The war's impact was felt deeply in the colonies, where communities were often on the front lines. From 1702 to 1713, English colonists fought against their French and Spanish rivals. These years were marked by relentless skirmishes, sieges, and battles. The colonists, driven by the desire to expand their territories and secure their futures, engaged in fierce combat. They battled for control of land, resources, and trade. The stakes were high, as control over these elements meant power and prosperity. The war was not just a series of isolated battles, but a comprehensive struggle for dominance in the New World. Native American tribes were drawn into the conflict, their alliances shifting with the tides of war. These tribes played crucial roles, often aligning with European powers that promised them the best chance of survival and advantage. Their involvement added another layer of complexity to the war. This war was not just about European ambitions, it was a multifaceted conflict that involved various stakeholders, each with their own goals and motivations. The European powers sought to expand their empires, but the war also had profound implications for the indigenous populations and the future of the continent. It was a struggle for the future of North America. The outcome of the war would shape the geopolitical landscape of the continent for centuries to come. The battles fought during this period were not just about immediate gains, but about securing a legacy and a foothold in the New World. The outcome would determine which European power would control vast territories and influence the lives of Native American populations. The decisions made and the territories won or lost during this war would have lasting effects on the cultural and political development of North America. The stakes were high and the fighting was brutal. The war was characterized by its intensity and the high cost of human life. Both soldiers and civilians suffered greatly, and the scars of this conflict would be felt long after the last battle was fought. The War of the Spanish Succession and its North American theater, Queen Anne's War, were defining moments in the history of the 18th century. At the heart of this conflict was the question of who would rule Spain. The Spanish king, Charles II, died childless in 1700. This left his throne open to rival claimants. The leading contenders were Louis XIV of France, who wanted the throne for his grandson, and Leopold I of Austria, who had his own claim. England, fearing French dominance, supported Austria's claim. This disagreement over who should rule Spain ignited a major European war. The conflict quickly spread to North America, where England, France, and Spain all had colonial possessions.
In the north, the war began with a series of devastating raids. The French, allied with the Abenaki and other Native American tribes, launched attacks on English settlements. One of the most infamous raids occurred in Deerfield, Massachusetts, in 1704.
French forces and their Native American allies descended upon the unsuspecting town in the dead of winter. They killed dozens of settlers, including women and children. Over 100 were taken captive and forced to march hundreds of miles to Canada. The Deerfield raid shocked the English colonists and fueled their desire for revenge.
The English responded to these raids with their own campaigns. In 1710, they captured Port Royal, the capital of French Acadia. This was a major victory for the English as it gave them control of a strategically important port.
However, the fighting in the north remained fierce. The French, with their Native American allies, continued to raid English settlements. The war was a brutal back-and-forth struggle, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Section 5. The South endures terror in Charlestown. The war also raged in the South. Here the main targets were English settlements in South Carolina.
In 1706, a combined French and Spanish fleet attacked Charlestown, the colony's capital. The attack was repelled, but it instilled fear in the colonists.
The threat of Spanish invasion from Florida remained a constant worry for South Carolinians. The colony was vulnerable, and its small population lived in fear of further attacks. The war in the South was as much about survival as it was about conquest. Section 6. Spanish Retaliation, Bloodshed in Appalachia. The Spanish, retaliating against English incursions, sought to reassert their dominance in the region. They carried out their own brutal attacks, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake.
One of the most horrific events occurred in 1704 with the Appalachia Massacre. This event marked a dark chapter in the history of the region. The Spanish, aided by their Native American allies, launched a ferocious attack on the Appalachia people, who had been missionized by Franciscan friars and had adopted many aspects of Spanish culture and religion. These missions were supposed to be under Spanish protection, yet they became targets in the conflict.
This massacre, prompted by the Appalachians' alliance with the English, was a brutal reminder of the shifting allegiances and fragile peace in the region. It resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Appalachia people, including women and children, further inflaming tensions in the region and leading to a cycle of violence and retribution. The massacre highlighted the complex and often tragic position of Native Americans caught between warring European powers, each vying for control and influence.
The bloodshed in Appalachia was not just a battle. It was a stark reminder of the brutal realities of war. It underscored the devastating impact on indigenous communities, who were often the most vulnerable in these conflicts. The Appalachia Massacre serves as a poignant example of the human cost of colonial ambitions and the tragic consequences of cultural clashes.
Section 7. The Western Frontier. A struggle for survival. The war also extended into the Western Frontier, where English traders clashed with French traders and their Native American allies. The prize was control of the lucrative fur trade.
This competition for resources and influence fueled ongoing skirmishes and raids. These conflicts, though smaller in scale than the battles in the North and South, were no less brutal. The vast wilderness provided no refuge from the violence and bloodshed of war.
Section 8. Native Americans, caught in the crossfire. Throughout Queen Anne's War, Native American tribes found themselves caught in the middle of a European conflict. They were courted as allies, but their interests were often sidelined.
The Iroquois Confederacy, traditionally powerful in the Northeast, tried to maintain a policy of neutrality. However, they were drawn into the conflict, fighting on both sides at different times. The war had a devastating impact on many Native American communities. Their villages were raided, their people killed or captured, and their traditional ways of life disrupted. The conflict exacerbated existing tensions between different tribes. It also led to the displacement of entire populations as they were forced to flee their homelands. Section 9. The Treaty of Utica, a new order for North America. After years of fighting, the war finally ended in 1713 with the Treaty of Utica. This treaty, signed in Europe, had major implications for North America. France ceded Acadia, Newfoundland, and Hudson Bay to Great Britain. These territorial changes significantly expanded Britain's North American empire. The treaty also had a profound impact on the balance of power in the region. Great Britain emerged as the dominant colonial power, while France's influence waned. The treaty, however, did not address the underlying tensions between the European powers or their relationships with Native American tribes. Section 10. The Legacy of War, Seeds of Future Conflict. Queen Anne's War was a brutal conflict that left a lasting legacy on North America. Fought between 1702 and 1713, it was part of a larger struggle known as the War of the Spanish Succession, which engulfed much of Europe. The war solidified Britain's position as the dominant colonial power in the region, but it also sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The British gained control of territories such as Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and the Hudson Bay area, expanding their influence significantly. However, the unresolved issues of land, resources, and trade continued to fuel tensions between European powers and with Native American tribes. The French, who had lost significant territory, were not willing to accept British dominance without a fight. The war also highlighted the complex role of Native Americans in colonial conflicts. Different tribes allied with either the French or the British, hoping to leverage these alliances to their advantage. They were often forced to choose sides, playing a dangerous game of shifting alliances in an attempt to protect their own interests. This precarious balancing act often led to internal divisions and conflicts within the tribes themselves. The legacy of Queen Anne's War would continue to shape the destiny of North America for decades to come. The seeds of future conflicts were firmly planted, leading to further wars and struggles for control over this vast and resource-rich continent. The echoes of this war can be traced through subsequent conflicts, including the French and Indian War, and even the American Revolution, as the quest for dominance and control continued to drive the actions of both European settlers and Native American tribes.